19 states that the President may investigate, regulate. We'll be back in 3 minutes after word from our sponsors.
Hometown Rental Center. Call 753-1445.
Customer century.
Because without such discipline, no progress can be made, no leadership becomes effective. We are, I know, ready and willing to submit.
Okay, that was coming in a little too low, so we're going to go ahead and continue. As we continue talking about the War Powers Act, the President may investigate, regulate, or prohibit under such rules and regulations as he may prescribe, by means of license or otherwise, any transaction in foreign exchange, export, or earmarkings of gold or silver, coin, or bullion or currency, transfer of credit in any form than credits relating solely to transactions to be executed wholly within the United States. Again, we see here that the citizens and the transactions of the citizens made wholly within the United States were specifically excluded from the War Powers Act. We, the people, were not the enemies of the country. Therefore, the government did not have total authority over us as they were given over our enemies. It is important to draw attention again to this fact that citizens of the United States in October 1917 were not called enemies. Consequently, the government under the War Powers Act did not have authority over us. We were still protected by the Constitution. Granted, over our enemies of this nation, the government was empowered to do nothing it deemed necessary, but not over us. The distinction made between enemies of the United States and citizens of the United States will become crucial later. In Section 2 of the Act of March 9, 1933, we see that they are now going to amend Section 5B. Now let's see how it reads after it's been amended. During a time of war or during any other period of national emergency declared by the President may, through any agency that may be designated or otherwise investigate, regulate, or prohibit under such rules and regulations as may be possible, prescribed by means of license or otherwise, any transaction in foreign exchange, transfers of credit between or payments by banking institutions as defined by the President, and export, hoarding, melting, and earmarkings of gold or silver, coin, or bullion or currency by any person within the United States or any place subject to the justification thereof. What just happened? As far as commercial, monetary, or business transactions were concerned, the people of the United States were no longer differentiated from any other enemy of the United States. We had just lost that crucial distinction. Comparing Exhibit 17 with Exhibit 19, we can see that the phrase which excluded transactions excluded wholly within the United States has been removed from the amended version of Section 5B of the Act of March 9, 1933, and replaced with by any person within the United States or any place subject to the jurisdiction thereof. All monetary transactions, whether domestic or international in scope, were now placed at the whim of the President of the United States through the authority given to him by the Trading with the Enemy Act. To summarize this crucial point, on October 6, 1917, at the beginning of America's involvement in World War I, Congress passed a Trading with the Enemy Act, empowering the government to take control over any and all commercial, monetary, or business transactions conducted by enemies or allies of the United States. This act also defined the term enemy and excluded from that definition citizens of the United States. In Section 5B of the Act, we see that the President was given unlimited power, authority to control the commercial transactions of defined enemies, but we see that credits relating solely to the transactions executed wholly within the United States were excluded from that controlling authority. As transactions wholly domestic in nature were excluded from authority, the government had no extraordinary control over the daily business conducted by the citizens of the United States because they were certainly not the enemies. Citizens of the United States were not the enemies of their country in 1917, and the transactions conducted by the citizens within the country were not considered to be enemy transactions. But in looking again at Section 2 of the Act of March 1933, we see that the phrase excluding wholly domestic transactions has been removed from the amended version and replaced with by any person within the United States or any place subject to the jurisdiction thereof. The people of the United States were now subject to the power of the Trading with the Enemies Act of October 1917 for the purpose of all commercial, monetary, and in effect all business transactions. We the people became the same as the enemy and were treated no differently. There was no longer any distinction. It is important here to note that the acts of October 6, 1917 and March 9, 1933, it states during a time of war or during any other national emergency declared by the President. So we now see that the war powers not only includes a period of war, but also a period of national emergency as defined by the President of the United States. When either of these two situations occur, the President may, through any agency that he may designate or otherwise investigate, regulate, or prohibit under such rules and regulations as he may prescribe by means of license or otherwise any transactions. What can the President do now to we the people under this section? He can do anything he wants to. It's purely at his discretion. He can use any agency or any license that he desires to control it. This is called a constitutional dictatorship. Now let's see what we can find out with the Trading with the Enemies Act of October 6, 1917. The Trading with the Enemy Act, originally as amended, is strictly a war measure and finds its sanctions in the provision empowering Congress to declare war, grant letters of marque and reprisal, and make rules concerning captures of land and water. Remember your Constitution. Congress shall have the power to declare war, grants letters of marque and reprisal, and make all rules concerning the captures of land and the water of the enemies. If that be the case, let's look at the Memorandum of Law that now covers trading with the enemy. The Memorandum of American Cases and recent English cases of the law trading with the enemy, remembering that we are now the same as the enemy. Every species of intercourse with the enemy is illegal. This prohibition is not limited to mere commerce or commercial intercourse. I know that reading all of that is a little bit boring to the American people, but we have just laid out the best I can all the groundwork to let you know that through legislation the Constitution has effectively been suspended, and as late as 1973 the Senate Report 93-549 states that, and this is where all this comes from. We've shown where it came from in the Constitution with the writ of habeas corpus and the Fifth Amendment. So this is the groundwork for the War Powers Act and where our Constitution was suspended at. And again, you can go to our website and play FDR's speech, and if you listen from 15 minutes and 10 seconds to 18 minutes, it will make a lot more sense to you. Brian, we've laid it all out. We've got just a few more minutes in this hour. Anything you'd like to comment on?
So I urge everybody to do some research on this if you can break away from American Idol for a few minutes. Again, Senate Report 93-549. First sentence states, since March the 9th, 1933, the United States has been in a state of declared national emergency. That's what it says. We're not making this stuff up. We are in a state of national emergency right now, essentially eviscerating the Constitution of the United States. That's where we are.
And just in case you run up on this in your research, in 1976, Congress passed the National Emergency Termination Act. Abiding by the recommendations, the termination was in name only. The emergency powers were continued in the U.S. Code as permanent everyday powers. Section 5B of the Act of October 6, 1917, as amended March 9, 1933, the Trading with the Enemy Act, was again expressly exempted from the termination. So in 1976, the Congress decided that we were living under all these different emergency rules, and had been, because not only FDR invoked this, but other presidents did too. So they decided to get rid of all of them. All of them except the March 9th, 1933. That one was exempted. So while you do your research, if you come up on this, you will see a permanent condition. And a lot of people ask, why are you making a big deal out of this? Your Constitution is God-given rights. Your government doesn't have to bestow them on you, like Brian says a lot. You know, it's up to us to defend the Constitution. The Constitution is not there to defend us. But if the government has effectively legislated away in secret the Constitution and therefore is legislating any way they want to, like a dictatorship, and keeping it away from the public, we can't come up with solutions until we address the problem. And to me, the Constitution being in suspension and it being a big secret, that's a problem.